time. We're getting an echo. All right, are there any other questions for staff? Max or Lisa, do you know if there's anybody that wants to speak in opposition?
We had one person inquire. I don't believe that they're on the call. No one expressed any opposition.
Okay. Does anybody on the board think this should be moved to a regular agenda item? If not, is there a motion from the board?
It's Terry Brown. Move to approve variance.
This is Deborah Dryden. I second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Mr. Brown, second by Mrs. Dryden. We'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mrs. Dryden?
Yes.
Miss Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Sanderson, yes, it's approved. Let's look at the findings of fact and conclusions of law. I didn't see anything.
I don't see anything either. Motion to approve the findings of fact and conclusion of law as written.
This is Deborah Dryden. I second that.
We have a motion by Mr. Brown, a second by Mrs. Dryden to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law as written. Take a roll call vote. Mr. Brown?
Brown, yes.
Mrs. Dryden?
Yes.
Miss Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Sanderson, yes. So those are approved. The next case is 2020-053 for property located at 7640 Winterset Drive.
Case is a residential accessory side yard variance request. They're requesting a variance to allow a 3.3 foot reduction to the required 6 foot accessory side yard. And I'll give you a minute to look over your findings.
All right, go ahead, Lisa.
Exhibit 1 is a vicinity map of the subject property. Exhibit 2 is a zoning map of the property. The property is zoned R3 single family and is surrounded by R3 single family zoned properties. Exhibit 3 is an aerial map of the property. The property is located in a residential subdivision. Exhibit 4 is a close-up aerial of the property. You can see that the property is triangular shaped with an angle side property line. The garage is to the north of the home here at the end of the garage. And the property is also on the bulb of a cul-de-sac. Exhibit 5 is the floodplain areas and post-construction buffer that affect the rear of the property. So the entire rear of the property in the back is encumbered by the post-construction buffer and the floodplain areas that prevent construction in those areas. Exhibit 6 is a background of the property. The property was subdivided in 1975, and in 1976, the home was built. Exhibit 7 is background. In 2014, previous owners applied for a permit for a detached garage. The garage was supposed to be, since located to the side of the house, 6 feet off the left side property line, and all the permits indicated that the 6 foot was the minimum required side yard for the garage. When the garage was constructed, it was actually constructed 2.7 feet off the side property line, which is a 3.3 foot encroachment into the required side yard. The reason why it has to comply with the 6 foot side yard and not the 3 foot accessory is because it's not located in the established rear yard. And you can see in the lower right of your screen a little graphic that shows where the established rear yard is located. So only about a little bit, maybe a half of the garage is located actually in the established rear yard, but the portion that's encroaching is located to the side of the home. The applicant is requesting a variance of 3.3 feet from the required 6 foot side yard or a 2.7 foot side yard to allow the detached garage to remain. Exhibit 9 is considerations. Considerations of this property are the floodplain areas and post-construction buffer that would make it difficult to locate the garage further to the rear of the property. There's that 6 foot side yard with only a small portion of the lower left-hand corner in the front of the garage that is encroaching. So it's a minor encroachment that's not easily detected. Staff does support the requested variance. Exhibit 10 is a consideration that the applicants purchased the property in 2017, and this was 3 years after the garage was built. So the applicants were not involved in the construction of the garage. Exhibit number 11 is a photo of the property, and you can see the distance of the garage to the neighboring home on the left. Another consideration is also that the applicant attempted to purchase property from the owner to the left so that the side yard could be in compliance, and they were unable to purchase that property. And that's the end of my presentation if you have any questions.
Is there any, Max, is there anybody that wishes to speak in opposition?
I did not receive any opposition on this case. The applicant is on the line, if you have any questions of him.
Okay. Are there any questions for staff from the board? Does the board have any reason to move this to the regular agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion?
This is Terry Brown. Motion to approve the variance.
Deborah Dryden, I'll second that motion.
We have a motion by Mr. Brown and a second by Mrs. Dryden to approve the variance. Take a roll call vote. Mr. Brown,
Brown, yes.
Mrs. Dryden,
Dryden, yes.
Mr. Welch,
Welch, yes.
Miss Allen,
yes,
Sanderson, yes. So it's approved. Let's look at the findings of fact and conclusions of law.
I'm sorry, I don't have those. Maxine was sending an email. I have the one for the previous one, but not for this one, the finding of facts.
They were in the, they were included with the original package last week.
I apologize. It's coming.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just got the email so everybody can take a quick look at those. I didn't see any comments.
The email's just now coming through, Rick, so give me a
Okay.
second.
All right.
Okay, this is Deborah Dryden. I vote to approve the finding of facts for this case.
This is Terry Brown. I second.
We have a motion by Mrs. Dryden, a second by Mr. Brown to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law as written. Take a roll call vote. Mrs. Dryden,
Dryden, yes.
Mr. Brown,
Brown, yes.
Miss Allen,
Yes.
Mr. Welch,
Yes.
Sanderson, yes. All right, those are approved. Our next case, we will move to the regular agenda, which is case number 2020-032 for property located at 2609 Hampton Avenue. Max, I know that there are some speakers, some people that want to speak in opposition, and I think we have the property owner. So we need to get anyone who wants to speak on this case sworn in.
Yes. I'm just going to move everyone that wants to speak on this case to a panelist, so you'll have control over your own microphone. Just be sure to be careful with that, and because it can cause feedback. Give me 1 second.
Greg's asking.
Yeah, everyone needs to be sworn in.
I need to hear.
Okay, I believe everyone on the case is for or against the applicant, the property owner. Everyone is either unmuted or made a panelist who can unmute themselves.
Okay. So everyone except attorneys who wish to speak either for or against on case number 2032 for property located at 2609 Hampton Avenue, please reply to this question. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter at hand?
You're stuck here, right?
I do.
I do.
Yes.
I do.
I do.
All right.
I do.
I do.
All right. Thank you. When it gets to your point to talk, I will give you an opportunity to speak. We'll go through the staff's presentation and any questions, and then we'll go through the applicant's presentation and any questions, and I'll give people who have who want to speak in opposition or for at that time the opportunity to speak. But when you speak, please let Mr. Oliver know that you want to speak. And before you start speaking, please say your name and address for the court reporter. And will everybody please mute their phones during the presentation? I will as well. So Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, just leave it up.
All right, this case is an accessory structure side yard variance request. Applicant is requesting a 2.5-foot variance from the 6-foot required side yard to allow a newly constructed accessory structure to remain. And I'll give you a minute to look over your calendar.
Hey, Lisa, you can go ahead and speak. Before you do, Mr. Bidencoat, please mute your line. We're hearing some feedback. Mr. Spratt, please do the same.
Okay, Exhibit 1 is a vicinity map of the subject property. Exhibit 2 is a zoning map of the property. The property is zoned R3 single family and surrounded by other R3 single family zoned properties. Exhibit 3 is an aerial map of the subject property. The property is located in a residential neighborhood. Exhibit 4 is a close-up aerial of the property. This is the home on the property, and currently there is a pool and then the pool house to the north. Exhibit 5 is a background of the property. Permits were obtained for the property in 2018, and permits included a pool house for the property. It listed the required left side yard as 3 feet for the pool house. So this, you can see a graphic on the top right of the screen. Accessory structures located to the side of a principal structure have to comply with the required side yard of the principal structure. And so this is 6 feet for the required side yard. The permit incorrectly said that that side yard was 3 feet, assuming it was in the established rear yard. So the applicant is asking for a variance request of 2.5 feet from the required 6-foot side yard for a 3.5-foot side yard for the pool house that was constructed. The staff supports the proposed variance request. Exhibit 7 is a consideration, and that is the shape of the previous and the current home. Before the current home was built, the previous home had a fairly standard established rear yard that was a little bit deeper. When the new home was constructed, it was constructed in an L shape where the right side of the home encroaches out into more of the rear yard area, making a smaller established rear yard area. Exhibit number 8 is another consideration. This consideration is the topography of the rear yard, and there's a 6-foot grade change between where the pool is and the rear property line. So the fence that you see in the back here is actually a retaining wall. So it would have been harder to locate the pool house closer to the rear of the property. Exhibit number 9 is street view photos of the pool house. You can see the pool house in the top left in the middle. And then it's kind of screened with some bushes, but you can see it in the lower right as well. Exhibit number 10 is a front photo of the property. And that's my presentation if you had any questions.
Thank you, Lisa. Are there any questions for staff? Lisa, how did this come? I know it came because they got a notice of violation they found out, but how did it come to staff's attention?
Through them trying to remedy the notice of violation.
And how did they get that? How did they, do we know how they got the notice of violation, how it was identified?
I believe it was a complaint.
Okay. Any other questions from the board for staff before we get to the applicant? Okay.
Lisa, I'm sorry, I'd like some clarification on why it was permitted at 3. I don't understand why it was 3 feet. They thought it was 3 feet, but it was more than that. There's the confusion there.
I believe that the confusion, if you look on slide 7, when they permitted for the demolition of the 2016 home that you see on the right side to build the current 2019 home, and they also got building permits for the pool and the pool house. The confusion may have come in where they were looking at the previous established rear yard instead of what was proposed, that was located to the side and not in the established rear yard.
Okay.
But that's speculation of what may have happened.
But it looks like from the paperwork that the homeowners, they went through several steps before they requested the permit, correct? And they got
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
They got legal counsel to.
Right, to got legal counsel to look at it, and they still missed it. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff? Are there any questions from the applicant for staff?
No.
Okay. Then we will let the applicant go ahead and start their presentation. Please state your name and address for the court reporter.
Mr. Sanderson,
Yes.
this is Gilly Spratt. I'm one of the opponents. I represent myself and my wife. I'm a retired lawyer, but I'm still licensed. And I had given notification to zoning that I intended to ask questions of some of the witnesses. And I would like to ask a few questions of Lisa, if that's permitted.
Let me, Mr. Spratt, just a second. Miss Andrea, is that?
We did have conversations with staff about that, and that is permitted. Of course, subject to you, Mr. Chair, but that we did discuss that.
Okay. Then Mr. Spratt, you can go ahead and ask your question. And you are a member of the bar?
I am. I'm been licensed in North Carolina since 1973. I am retired, but I have maintained my license, and my state bar number is 5845.
So Andrea, he doesn't need to be sworn.
He doesn't need to be sworn. He doesn't need to be sworn.
Thank you. That's why I was asking that question, Mr. Spratt, just to clarify.
Okay. And by the way, earlier when you asked for non-lawyers to be sworn in, I was one who spoke up then, because even though I'm a lawyer, I'm also a witness, so I wasn't sure about that. So I have been sworn in.
Okay. Well, thank you.
May I call you Lisa?
Yes.
Just
State your name and address, Mr. Spratt, just for the court reporter.
My apology. My full name is Robert Spratt. Everybody calls me Gilly Spratt. I live at 2601 Hampton Avenue, which is next door to the Talibi Pool House. Lisa, when zoning made the decision to recommend approval of the variance application, when did that occur? Approximately?
I believe after they had submitted and we reviewed as a staff with the zoning administrator and the attorney.
All right. And when you say the attorney, you're referring to Suzanne Todd?
No, Therese. Staff's attorney.
I'm sorry, you broke up. Who?
Therese Hagler Gray, staff's attorney.
Oh, I'm sorry, the city attorney. My apology. In any event, at the time that the decision to make the recommendation was made, you had documents and information from the applicant, but you did not have any information or document from opposition. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. We just knew about the notice of violation.
Okay. Do you know whether the pool house as built complied with the erroneously issued building permit?
House does comply with the building permit.
Ma'am?
I think you asked if the pool house complies with the building permit as
with the erroneously issued building permit.
Correct.
You say it does comply?
The erroneous building permit said it was a 3-foot side yard, and it does comply with that. Yes.
Right. Now, how was that determined?
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Yes.
This is Therese Hagler Gray, city attorney for the staff. I want to object to a non-party essentially cross-examining the staff at this time. I don't think it's appropriate at this point. I do understand that there's an opportunity for for this attorney to present his case in opposition, and perhaps he has questions at that point. But we have not even heard from the applicant at this point.
Okay, noted. Andrea?
Mr. Chair, our rules of procedure don't specifically speak to this very issue. I would say that as long as the parties have an opportunity to preserve their question, I think the city's objection is valid. I don't know that due process rights are being impacted by delaying the questions to later in the hearing. So what our rules of procedure do state is that the order of presentation will be city staff, followed by cross-examination, if any, by the applicant, and then the applicant's presentation, and then the presentation by those who are speaking in opposition of the project. So I will leave it to you, Mr. Chair, with that information.
All right, Mr. Spratt, if we could, let's hold off your questions just for a few minutes until we get the applicant's presentation, if that's all right.
That's fine, Mr. Sanderson. Thank you.
All right. So let's go ahead and have the applicant do their presentation. So.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sanderson. Other board members, appreciate you having us here today. I had a brief.
Wait, excuse me, please state your name and address for the court reporter.
Suzanne Todd, 1065 East Moorhead Street, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28202.
Thank you.
And is there any way to rotate that, Max?
I'm working on it right now.
Thank you, Lisa. Perfect. Again, this is variance case 2032, 2609 Hampton Avenue. Next slide, please. And you've seen this photograph before. This is the photograph of the home of Ali Talibi and his wife, Sanaz Bormand, along with their two sons. They purchased a lot and, with the intention to demolish the existing improvements and build their dream home. They are not builders or contractors, and therefore they hired professionals to help them and ensure that this house was designed and constructed in accordance with all legal requirements. They hired Greg Perry. He is a custom home designer with over 15 years of experience in custom home design, including homes in Myers Park. In fact, he designed a house 3 doors down from the subject. We have prepared an affidavit that he has signed and is notarized, and that is Exhibit 4 that was submitted to you in an effort to kind of move things along as quickly as possible. Mr. Talibi also consulted with Ryan Hoffman, real estate attorney, who reviewed Perry's plans and determined that they complied with all applicable zoning regulations and any private deed restrictions. We did provide a letter from Mr. Hoffman as part of our initial submittal. We've also provided you with an affidavit. It's identified as Exhibit 5. And Talibi's also hired Ted Thompson, who is a licensed general contractor with over 10 years of experience in custom home building, including experience building homes in Myers Park. And his affidavit was included with your documents as Exhibit 6. All these folks are available for any questions you might have. Next slide, please. This is an aerial view of the house. As Ms. McCarter mentioned, redevelopment of the lot presented some challenges. There was a slope from Hampton Avenue. The slope actually rises slightly to the front of the house, and then the slope fell off about 7 to 8 feet to the back, necessitating fill and retaining walls to maximize the usable area. Mr. Perry, because of that, designed a unique L shape that took advantage of the lot depth while providing a long open area in the backyard for the pool and the pool house. Next slide. These are Greg Perry's design plans. This L-shaped configuration, again, apparently created some confusion among these professionals. Next slide. You can see that the plans actually showed the pool house sitting 3.6 feet from the property line, the side property line. Mr. Hoffman reviewed these plans and mistakenly believed that the pool house was in the rear yard versus the side yard, again attributable to the configuration of the house. Again, his affidavit is Exhibit 5, and once he approved these plans as being consistent with both zoning regulations as well as the any private restrictions, the plans were submitted for review by the city and the county, and these in the next slide. And the county issued a permit for the house indicating left and right setbacks is 3 feet. So again, this was sort of one mistake layered on top of the other, with Mr. Talibi doing everything he could to make sure that his house and his property was in compliance. Next slide, please. These are photographs of the construction. Construction started on this property around about the end of 2018. This is a photo from February 4th of the pool house showing the work. The work was performed simultaneously on the house, pool house. You can see a little bit of the garage in the background. These were all kind of worked simultaneously as the contractors moved from structure to structure. This photograph shows that February 4th, 2019 shows work, that the pool house is in fact at that point framed, the height, width, location evident in proximity to the survey stake between Talibi and the adjacent property. You can see to the left hand the little yellow, the little pink flag survey stake. Next slide, please. This is continued construction on the pool house. In the distance behind, you can see Mr. Spratt's home, who spoke earlier. And this photograph goes from April 21st. Next slide. And this again is continued construction of the pool house in July of 2019. This was, in fact, in July is the first time that Mr. Spratt expressed any concern about the pool house. He actually made comment with the fact that there was a tree that was on his property overhanging the chimney, and he asked Mr. Talibi to have that tree pruned, and Mr. Talibi agreed to do that. The next slide is a photograph from October of 2019. The pool house at this point is substantially complete. This was the first time really aesthetic concerns about the pool house and proximity to side property line were raised. Mr. Talibi and his attorney at that time, Mr. Hoffman, met with adjacent owners, the Marsh Park HOA.